Is anybody even profitable trading options? Let's see. Hey guys, Steven here. Now, one of the types of emails I most frequently get from traders is on the subject or about the subject of success rate for options traders, and specifically the lack thereof success from options traders. And look, on one hand, I'm going to say this very loosely. On one hand, I kinda get it. Right? The 90-90-90, that was a tongue twister rule, states that 90% of traders lose 90% of their money in their first 90 days. Now, you have a statistic like that. Everyone has their own war stories of how much they've lost, how they lost money, how hard it is to make money in the market, how you got screwed in the market, how the game is unfair. Like, I've heard all these before. So I think for the average person, whether there's somebody who just follows the market, whether there's somebody who is an active trader in the market, whether they trade options or not, again, I can kind of understand how people would take a look at this 90-90-90 rule and say, yes, that makes sense. But again, I keep on hedging that because I kind of get it. And this number is really shocking to me. It's very shocking to me. Now, the reason why it's shocking to me is because I've been now teaching folks how to trade successfully and consistently in the market for the past 7 years. I've taught nearly 10,000 traders how to do that. And my personal experience of those who I have taught is nowhere near this 90-90-90 rule where most people are blowing out their accounts within the first 3 months. It's nowhere near that. It's kind of like this. If we take a look here, Gary was 12 for 12. Jaron was 11 for 11. James was 24 for 26. Derek was 30 for 30. Penny was 20 for 22, and Paulette was 7 out of 8. And over the past 1 month, my portfolio, my account has risen $133,000. So again, I kind of get it, the stigma or the aura when it comes to the market, and especially when it comes to trading the market as a non-professional, as a non-hedge fund, as a non-institution, as a non-money manager. Like, the aura of the market, the conventional thinking of the market is that this is totally true. That everyone gets their asses handed to them very quickly in the market, and that's kind of how it goes, and you should never do it, and you should, take your money, you should give it to Wall Street, and they should click the buttons for you, even though they're not nearly as good as you think either. So again, I understand on one hand how this is conventional wisdom, but again, my experience based on my personal results and based on the results I have seen for those who I have taught, is way different than conventional wisdom or the conventional thought of the success rates, especially when it comes to trading options, right? So I've been getting all these emails over the past couple of weeks, people just saying point blank, Steven, is anyone even profitable trading options? And the answer is, again, based on my personal experience, which is what you see here. Now, again, this is a screenshot from yesterday, December 4th. So there are times when I do not make money. There are times when my account balance goes down, but by and large, I started with a lot less than what you see here. And again, my experience, that is not my personal, because James and Derek and Penny and Paulette, who have these very high success rates and very high win rates, of course, I'm not clicking the button for them, but I doubt every single one of these people is lying too. So again, my personal experience and my experience of my students and the track record that I and them have been able to have over the past couple of years is, yes, absolutely 100%, people are profitable trading options. And you can take that to the bank for sure. So we have two competing ideas, two competing concepts. Again, on one hand, this is what the average person thinks of, whether they've started to trade or not, that basically everyone comes to the market and loses. So we have that at one end of the spectrum over here. And then we have at the complete other end of the spectrum, people basically winning the majority of their trades, and me making over 6 figures over a 30-day period and having an account that was very small to start with and now is almost 2.5 million. So those are, why am I doing this one? This is so much easier. Oh, that's going to segue very nicely into the rest of the video. But like we have these two completely competing ends of the spectrum. So when I think about like how can the average person who trades lose so frequently? How can the average person who just thinks about the market, thinks of it's just one big gamble, one big casino, and by the way, they're not wrong with that. Like, how does that happen when like this is the world that I've kind of lived in for the past decade or so, right? It comes down to mathematical edges. And if you've been watching any of my videos over the past couple of weeks, you know I've been harping on this concept of mathematical edges. It's really, really simple. If you don't have the edge in your favor, at least in the market, it's against you. And if you don't have the edge in your favor in the market, that means that you losing is inevitable. Again, you may win some, you may lose some, but the loss, the overall result of you losing is inevitable. And the same is true, or the inverse is true, if you have the edge in your favor. If you have the edge in your favor, you can get a lot of stuff wrong, and you will very much have very, 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 very high odds of being successful over the long run, right? And the example I always give is blackjack, right? I always give this example right here. It always resonates very well. In the game of blackjack, right, the house pays you when you win what you have bet. So if you bet $50 and you win outside of getting blackjack, you make $50, right? So the idea is they are paying you as if you win half the time, 50% of the time. Again, you bet $25, you win, they give you back $25, right? That is an expected win of 50% if everything is done correctly in terms of the math, which you're about to find out it's not. So this means they pay you as if you win 50% of the time, but because you go first before the dealer gets to do anything, you can bust or go over 21 before the dealer even plays their hand, regardless of the outcome they would have had. So the dealer may have ended up losing money or may have ended up going over 21 or getting cards that are not close to 21 but not over compared to yours, but because you had the opportunity to lose before they had the opportunity to even play, that gives the house a mathematical advantage of just 0.43%. So it's not enormous. It's not huge, but it's there. It is absolutely there 100%. So very similar to how many of you have felt when you have traded, you may win some and you may lose some, but over the long run, you do lose. And the reason why is because you as the player or the gambler, you go first. You can bust first, thus giving the house a small edge that makes you losing money and them making money a mathematical certainty. Now think about that when it comes to trading, right? If you have the edge against you when it comes to trading, you losing money and somebody else making money is a mathematical certainty. And the inverse is also true. So if you have the edge in your favor, you making money and somebody else losing money is also a mathematical certainty. Now, I don't understand why people don't talk about this as much as I have been talking about it. They talk about indicators, charts, the news, the Fed, some individual stock and how they did. It's so much simpler than that. It's just get that fucking edge on your side and just beat the shit out of it. So what's kind of interesting about traders asking me if anyone even makes money trading options is, to me, if you're asking that, if you trade options and you are unsuccessful, and you ask me a question like, does anyone even make money trading options? To me, it means that you are buying options. If you trade options and you basically continue to lose over and over again, it is because you are buying options. Probably. Most likely. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Now, options have by far the most mathematical edge, much more so than equities, futures, or Forex. Options by far have the largest mathematical edge. Now, sometimes, because again, you can buy an option or you can sell an option. Sometimes there is an edge in buying options at opportune times. But basically, every other moment where the edge is not in the favor of the options buyer, the edge is in the advantage or in the corner of the options seller. So I think one of the reasons options trading has such a low success rate is because traders are buying options. And the majority of the time, option sellers have the edge in their favor. So the majority of the time, these unsuccessful options traders are just placing trades where they, in many cases, have a heavy edge against them. Now, it is not as easy as just go out there and sell options. There is much more to it. But as a blanket statement, I will say that the edge more times is in the favor of the option seller as opposed to the option buyer. So here's a really good example of how we can visualize that. At the bottom part of the screen right now, and I'll just make this a little bit bigger, I have developed an algorithm that will measure. Again, this is a blanket statement. There are times every single day where there's benefit to being an option buyer over an option seller. There are times every single week where that is true, every single day where that is true, every single minute where that is true. So it's not as easy as saying, I'm just going to sell options and that's it. There's more to it, but as a blanket statement, the edge that comes with options is in the favor more often. It is in the favor of the option seller more often than it is in the favor of the option buyer. Now, truthfully, if you buy options, it doesn't have to be in your favor so often for you to make money, but that's for another video. So if we take a look here, this indicator, this algorithm is blanket statement. Okay, is blanket statement. When the lines are green or above the zero line, that means that the edge at that point in time is in the favor of the option seller. And when this plot down here is red or plots below zero, that means that the edge is in the favor of the option buyer. Now, again, there is much more to this. But this is very high level, 10,000 foot view blanket statement. More often, the edge is in the seller, is in the favor of the option seller. Right, so this is SPY, the S&P 500 Index ETF. 10% of the time, the edge so far this year was in the favor of the option buyer. And we can look at individual stocks too. So we could look at Apple. Right, so Apple maybe 20% of the time. The overall 10,000 foot view edge was in the favor of the option buyer. We can look at the NASDAQ, for example. Let's say 15% of the time, the edge was in the favor of the option buyer. Let's look at like Amazon, for example. Maybe a little bit more, maybe like 30-40% of the time, the edge was in the favor of the option buyer as opposed to the seller. Let's look at bonds, for example, TLT, learn how to type. Again, same thing, maybe 30% of the time, the edge was in the favor of the option buyer. But more times than not, it's in the edge of the option seller. And one of the things that this algorithm or this indicator kind of shows is the magnitude of that edge. Because remember, when it comes to blackjack, casinos don't lose. When it comes to blackjack, the edge is like less than 1%. When it comes to how options are and the edge between the option seller and the option buyer, there are many cases, and this is TLT, this is bonds, where the edge is as high as 49%, or going in the middle of October, it was as high as 140%. So again, it's not as easy as you just go out there and you just sell options and having no idea what you're doing. It is more involved than that. There's much more involved in that, but it is as easy as if I choose to go out there and buy options, I likely have some sort of an edge built in against me. So yes, it's not as easy as like literally just blindly I can sell options whenever, but it is probably true to say if I'm going to buy options, unless I know the time that I'm buying options has a built-in statistical and mathematical edge, that I'm probably going to have a little bit of an edge against me. And I do need to do specific things to be able to overcome that edge is probably the best way to describe it. So again, this doesn't mean you can just go out there and blindly sell options. There's a lot to consider. You have to consider risk and reward, days till expiration, capital requirements. But again, blanket statement. The edge is in the favor of the market or the option seller much more frequently than it is in the favor of the options buyer. So if you're somebody who believes in the 90-90-90 rule, if you're somebody who believes it is very difficult to be profitable when trading options, here's something for you to nibble on. If you want to know if anyone even makes money or is profitable trading options, the answer is yes. And if you don't know how, it might be because you're somebody who buys options. And while there is definitely edge in buying options at specific times, as a blanket statement, more times than not, the mathematical edge is in the favor of the options sellers. So you may want to consider exploring strategies where you are the option seller, just because more frequently than not, I'll do NVIDIA here. More often than not, the edge is in the favor of the seller. And obviously, the more times you can have the edge in your favor, the more making money becomes inevitable for you. So if you are interested in learning more, because again, you can't just sell options. There's definitely times when you can buy options and have a massive edge. There's also times where you can sell options and have a massive edge. If you're interested in learning more about those edges and how you can be able to make consistent and predictable income from those edges, go ahead and click on the link I've added below this video. That's going to send you on over to a page where there's like a 10-minute training that's going to explain to you a little bit more about how to get mathematical edges in the market and how to use them in your favor. If you want access to this document right here, no problem. I've also added that to the description below this video. And if you found this video helpful, go ahead and give me a like. Go ahead and share it with a friend. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel and click the bell so you can be notified every single time that I post new content. But again, if you trade options and you are struggling, which may be a lot of you, one of the reasons you may be struggling is because you're kind of going up a big uphill battle. Because again, I know people who buy options only and they make a lot of money. I also know people who sell options only and they make a lot of money. So both can work, but if you're not at a certain skill level, it's probably going to be a little bit better to you to consider being on the sell side of options, just because more often than not, the edge is in your favor as the option seller. And again, if you want to learn more about where that edge comes from, how the hell it's this way, and how we can really take advantage of it to make a lot of money, very high ROI, very consistently, go ahead and click on the link below this video, and I'll see you in the next one.